Hello again. Been thinking about death. Morbid? No, I don't think so. Death is not a morbid subject. We've just been conditioned to believe that it is. Because death is a perfectly natural part of life. Therefore, we should be able to talk about it. Except here in Western culture, we have a very uncomfortable relationship with death because we don't really understand ourselves very well. And for that, to a large extent, I think we can blame Christianity, as usual. Christianity does not view death as natural. Christianity says that death is a result of sin. It is something that shouldn't have happened. I can't look at it that way anymore, although I used to. A friend of mine who is a Christian, well, he's a Jehovah's Witness, so he probably wouldn't want to be called a Christian, and Christians probably wouldn't regard him as Christians, but he's more individualistic than most. He wrote a book. I've actually got it here, so I'm going to give him a little bit of a plug, called Diary of a Parallel Man by David Elham. David Elham is a pseudonym. It's not his real name, because the book he was writing, he was a little concerned that the people at his church wouldn't sort of respect him, I guess, for writing something, because it might not have been exactly in keeping with the doctrines that he was supposed to believe in, or something like that. He has published books under his real name, which I won't reveal in case he doesn't want me to. But, kudos to David here for actually stepping outside of the boundaries, real or imagined, that were imposed upon him, and just, speaking the truth as he saw it. But the book is interesting because it presents a narrative where the fall from grace did not happen. An alternate universe where Adam and Eve were real. It's the old literal creation story. Adam and Eve were real, except they didn't eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Therefore, sin did not occur and no one would die. Right? Now, the problem with this, from a purely physics point of view, is if you have an infinite capacity for reproduction, a complete inability to die, and you're living on a finite landmass, do the math. It doesn't work, right? You just fill up the earth to capacity, and then everybody's walking on top of everybody. There's no more room, and you can invent some sort of narrative about how we might end up exploring space to cure that problem. But you're trying to compensate there. Besides, you can't really separate the organism of man from the environment that he lives in. You are the planet in a very real sense. I've said this before, the air coming in and out of your lungs, the relationship you have with the trees that allows this to happen, is no different in principle from the blood that circulates internally in your veins. External and internal, it all has to work together. You can't take man off the planet without taking a piece of the planet with you to keep man alive. This idea that you can go off into space and survive is a pipe dream. So no, the point stands. You just can't have everlasting life on a finite landmass while you still have the capacity to give birth. So within this, it should be really obvious why you need to die. All right? You need to die to make room for your replacements. That's not a horrible thing. We just think it is. Because once again, Christianity has made us believe that there's an entity in here called the soul, which is really the same thing as the ego, the sense of individual self-consciousness as an entity, right? And that must go on. That must go on at all costs. That's a really perverse way to look at life. I never used to think it was, and hardly anybody does think that, but it's a really perverse way to look at life. This idea that you have to hold life really tightly and never let go of it. It totally fails to understand that there is no you. And you may have heard me talking about non-duality before. Look at the last video I put out. There is no you. Yet you want to cling to this fake identity and make it last for an everlasting duration instead of just letting it die when the body dies. It's important that you die. Otherwise, you fill the planet up, right? So you have this idea that, okay, I get that, so I'm going to die one day, but my personality goes on in another place that we're going to call heaven. So you've got this other place called heaven, and it just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding as all the souls fill it up. You know, and okay, you've got away from the problem of the finite landmass, even though you just pulled that idea out of a hat, right? It's not something you can actually connect to reality. You just made it up as a convenience, you know? So heaven just keeps expanding and expanding and expanding. But then according to the scriptures, God is going to eventually create a new heavens and a new earth where the disembodied souls are going to return and have new bodies, and we're back on earth. Wow, what a crowded place that's going to be, huh? All of this is a result of an inability to let go, an inability to hold life lightly, to travel lightly through life. I understand the need to cling to your identity. I understand that fully because I've been through it. I used to be a Christian. And then when I was an atheist, I still clung to that sense that I was this thing, that I really wanted to go on. And death was an absolute bummer that I couldn't stand because I would stop. And yet I never stopped long enough to actually examine, what do I mean by I? When I say I will stop, what do I mean by I? You examine that fully, follow that thread, you'll find non-duality at the bottom of it, and you'll come to realize that you don't exist in the way that you thought you did. You don't exist in a way that's separate from the universe around you. You are the universe. You're not a thing sitting inside the head. The river analogy that I used in the last video is appropriate. Let me reiterate a little bit now. You know, you stand at the edge of a river, it's flowing in front of you. You say to yourself, there's the river. It's an entity in front of me. There's the river. Close your eyes for a second, open them. You're still going to say, there's the river, except it's a different river because it was flowing. So all of those water molecules are now different water molecules, so it's a different river. There's no such thing as the river as a long-lasting, independent, separate entity, right? The same is true of the thing that you call you. You are not who you were when you were 10. You're not even who you were 10 minutes ago. Something has changed. But you really want to cling to who you are now. You look at yourself now and you go, I must live forever, right? But if you live another 30 years, something else is going to be going, I must live forever. Not who you were at this moment in time, because that will have changed. Consciousness will have flowed. And the thing that you identify as the self looks completely different than the self that was there 30 years prior. We just think we think there's an entity in here because we can trace the continuity in the same way that you can trace the continuity of a river. But where's the entity? It's just not there. It's just a continuity of consciousness stretched across time, with no moment of it any more important than any other moment. What's so important about any moment in your life? You were watching TV, you were going to work, you were eating your breakfast. Your life is just this collection of all these inconsequential moments, but somehow you put it all together and you think there's an I there, and I must live forever. It's absolutely nuts. Let go of it. The things that you do in life only have temporary significance. And that's beautiful. It's supposed to be that way. You are just consciousness in the abstract. Not a particular consciousness. You are consciousness peering out of a pair of eyes. I am consciousness peering out of a pair of eyes. We're both consciousness. We're both the same fundamental essence. We are one. Right? No identity. Identity is something that happens when consciousness gets filtered through a brain and a pair of eyes, and all this happens. Then it reflects back on itself and it goes, oh, there's a thing here and I am that thing. You're not. You're prior to that thing. You are not the noun consciousness, the entity consciousness. You are the verb consciousness, the constant flow of consciousness wherever it manifests, the doing of consciousness. Yeah? I feel like I'm getting sidetracked from talking about death, but this is all, it's really important to establish this. Because when I say it's really important that you die someday because the next generation is coming and you got to make room, right? I understand that the next generation is also me, is also consciousness. So I'm not really terribly worried about the fact that this crazy guy will not be here one day. I will be peering out through all the other eyes that are born after me. You see? I'm peering out through every pair of eyes in the entire world right now because I'm not the action figure. I'm consciousness. I will be peering out of all the other eyes that are here when this action figure is dead because I'm consciousness. You see? Let go of this idea that you're an entity. Everything falls into place. So, it's a beautiful thing if some of your life right now is focused upon the people who are coming after you. And that's one of the reasons why I enjoy working in a school. I don't have a family of my own. I can't experience the joy that a father experiences through his own children. And it's not like I'm trying to have I'm not trying to use my job as a surrogate family or anything like that, right? But there's something meaningful about working alongside kids that is just so much better than sitting in a stuffy office trying to serve some corporation or something. You get that, right? It's got to be more meaningful. Yeah. They're coming next. They're the future. And when you put focus upon them, when you see that when you're looking at them, you're looking at yourself. You're looking at your own future beyond the death of your body. The afterlife is the next generation. It's not this stupid thing floating off the body because it can't let go of itself, going to some other dimension and going, whew, I'm still alive, and there's the Lord Jesus and all my relatives, right? That's not going to happen. It's nuts. I am so comfortable with the idea that I am not going to be here one day. Really? Obviously, I don't want to die. The body has a natural self-defense mechanism in the sense that, the mind, it has those urges, that survival instinct, it's all built in. So I'm not going to just whimsically slit my wrists someday, right? But I'm totally comfortable with the idea that this does not last. And I think it's great, actually, that children are our replacements. Because if I'm perfectly honest, I have problems. I do. You see me, if you've watched my videos for a while, you might think, oh, look at that guy Darryl, he's really got it together. And in a sense, yeah, I suppose intellectually speaking, I've figured out some things that a lot of people never figure out. But I tell you, there are days when I'm kind of just holding the pieces of myself together. I've never been diagnosed mentally ill or anything like that, and I'm not a danger to anybody, but it's pretty messy upstairs from time to time. I'm guessing the same is probably true of you. The mind is a messy place. We pull ourselves together enough to lead civilized lives, at least most of us do, but it's messy. And if anything, as you go through life, you tend to collect more mess because, nobody starts off neurotic. Neuroses develop, and they take time and experience to develop, and they're very hard to overcome. And I got my share of them, and I'll probably have them till the day I die, right? So there's a certain sense of, I used to basically look at my neuroses and go, oh Lord, I'm such a terrible person, But now it's like, I look upon the fact that, I die, all those neuroses die with me, and I get to peer out through new eyes that see the world with this blank slate. A baby is born, that's me, that's consciousness, right? It all starts again. It's a lovely big reset button. And not only that, but there's the beauty of the fact that you get to forget so much. And I don't even mean trauma, not like that, but life just becomes more jaded when you've experienced so much of it. Nothing's new. I can never go to the seaside and look at it through the eyes of a child who's seeing the sea for the first ever time. Yeah? So this idea of heaven filled with all these experienced people who just can't let go of anything, the sacrifice there in that idea is nothing is ever new. You just become jaded. Well, you could say heaven is going to be so brilliant, it's going to feel totally great, so it's going to be new and exciting. All I know is the experience I have now, and it's nowhere near as exciting as it was when I was a kid. I just know too much, I've experienced too much. Yeah, there's going to be good times ahead, of course there is, but you remember youth, and you'll never get it again unless you redefine yourself as the person who's coming after you. Yeah? That's beautiful. The ability for all of this to just dissolve and more life to arise, to understand that that is you, is a beautiful thing. That's better than the idea of going to heaven. It really is. I am not attached to this idea that I must survive. Not attached to it at all. And this strikes me as the healthiest outlook on death that you could possibly have. The one thing that bothers me actually about death is that being a man with no family, I have amassed a considerable... I hate saying this because there's going to be some gold digger out there who goes, hey, there's a single man with a lot of money. I'm going to write to him and say, oh, you look handsome, right? Don't bother. I own my own home, right? Outright. It's all paid for. And I've got a considerable amount of money in the bank due to the fact that I save pretty easily. I'm not a materialistic person, but also due to the fact that when my parents died, they left me everything that they owned, right? So I'm well off. And I'm just, I imagine myself maybe having a terrible accident on the road, right? Let's say I'm on the motorbike and there's a big lorry coming right towards me, and it ends up in the wrong lane, and there's going to be a head-on collision, and I'm looking at it and I'm going, oh no, I will not survive this. And I've got maybe 5 seconds before I am splattered. I imagine the thought in my head being, look at everything I own. I've never made a will because I couldn't figure out what to do with it all. I don't have a next of kin. All of that is just going to go to the government, or it's going to have my relatives piecing it out among themselves or something like that. And that is the most disturbing thought I have about death. Not what's going to happen to my so-called soul, which I don't have, right? It's that. I'm not concerned about where I go, because there is no I. I'm concerned about the people who are left behind. I'm concerned about everything I could have done with my assets and didn't. Yeah? This is what matters. The present moment is the place where life occurs. Meaning is not defined by what is ahead. Ahead is a hypothetical thing. When the future happens, it happens now. Now is all you've got and all you ever will have, right? So, the solution is obvious. Figure out what to do. Make a will. I haven't done it yet, but I plan to, and I've made a pretty firm decision in my head what I'm going to actually do with my assets. And now when I kind of think of that head-on collision, which may never happen, right? When I think of that head-on collision with the lorry, I have this thought in my head: somebody is going to be so surprised. Somebody is going to be so surprised. That's all I'm going to say, right? I hope you enjoyed this little chat about death. I hope it makes you feel better, because honestly, there's nothing to feel bad about. Everything is working perfectly. Nature is perfect in its imperfection. And if you can, if your circumstances allow it, enjoy the time that you have and try to grasp the fact that the real you, consciousness, never really dies. All right? Take care.